So, hi, I'm Jessica, and welcome to the Passion to Profits Mastermind Coach Showcase. And we're featuring successful coaches and their stories of transformation from passionate coach to profitable business owner. Today, we have with us Tracy Balash, and she is the founder and principal of Brave Bird Studio. And Tracy joins us after 30 years as a broadcast journalist, a communications specialist, and leader in public administration. Tracy knew her passion was developing healthy teams and individuals, and she knew she was good at it. So Brave Bird Studio was born. Creating an environment of trust and intimacy with her clients, Tracy nurtures and provokes teams and individuals until they have the confidence and strength to fly beyond their perceived limits. I love that. Brave Bird Studio has a proven process to build bold leadership, turning toxic teams into healthy and inclusive workspaces. So thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jessica. This is great, and welcome everyone, and thanks for participating in this.
Yes. So today we want to, our students and our coaches here that are on the call today, they want to learn about how you took your passion and made it a reality. And so we have some questions that are consistent with the Passion to Profit Mastermind group. We want to learn more about you. We want to learn, about your beginnings and your growth, and certainly your future outlook for today. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's jump in. So tell us more about your passion for bold leadership. What do you believe about that?
All right. Well, I guess I got tired of seeing leaders in positions that they didn't have the training to be a leader. Most people were promoted because they were subject matter experts and not because they knew how to lead people. And it's created, I think, a lot of toxic environments. I had, as my bio states, I do love working with people to help them grow both personally and professionally. And that includes teams. So when I talk about bold leadership, I'm not talking about, the business decisions that are made every day, because most leaders are competent in making that. I'm talking about the healthy side of the organization, which involves the people and their employees.
Wonderful. Awesome. And so, so when you think about your audience that you're working with, what types of services, if Brave Bird Studio was a menu, like what would be on that menu in terms of coaching services that you provide?
So individual and team coaching, we also do self-assessments. So for example, I'm a practitioner for Myers-Briggs type indicator assessments. But we also do a brand new one called the 6 Types of Working Genius. And that's based on Patrick Lencioni's model. He wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, the Advantage. And it's a really great model because it shows how people show up at work. And what your geniuses are, what your competencies are, and what your working frustrations are. So the self-assessment piece, we do a lot of workshops on change resiliency, the transitions model. And then I created a workshop just around kind of the neuroscience behind change and what happens to us when it's not handled properly. And I love doing that one because I just love to see people go, oh, that's what's happening. That's why I feel that way. So that's pretty cool. And other kinds of team building activities. It's just been amazing.
Wonderful. And you're just lighting up just talking about the things that you offer. So I know it's deep within your passion. And I should also mention too, for folks on the call, is that, Tracy and I have known each other. We were just reminiscing. We've known each other almost 10 years now, and met through the Royal Roads network and family. So we're super excited to grow the family through the years. So can
I tell the story, Jessica, about how I actually started this business? I've shared this with so many people. This was Jessica who actually had me pivot and leave my cushy job and the provincial government and my high pay and my golden pension to pursue this whole coaching dream. And I had asked her, because she said to me, how do you want me to show up as your coach? And so I apologize, but this is exactly what I said. Okay. I said, look, I need you to call me on my crap. I said, because in my head, I'm brilliant. So if you hear something that is just off base, like, you need to challenge me on it. And at the time, I was an assistant deputy minister. And of course, you think, well, the next logical step is that I would become a deputy minister. So I'd already been talking to my DM about what that might look like. And so I was sharing this with Jessica, and she said, Tracy, she said, I need to challenge you. I said, yeah, go for it. And she says, what do you get from working at a level that you've already worked at? So what she meant by that is that I had worked for two of Alberta's premiers, and I had also been the acting managing director of the Public Affairs Bureau. So all of those positions sat at that deputy minister table. So she said, what do you get from working at a level that you've already worked at that you have described as ugly? What do you want your personal legacy to be? Now, how's that for a mind-blowing question? And that totally changed my life. So I have to share that story because it to me, it was a life-changing moment. Thank you, Jessica.
Well, thank you for going there. I mean, my best clients bring out my best. So that's a testament to how hard and how deep that you went as well through that time. And I remember that. So hearing it in your words, it really takes me back to that moment. So a little bit about her beginning story. Yeah. Tell us, are there any other pieces of the transformation from, that moment in time where you decided to become, to step into a coaching business, and now, like, tell us more about your transformation there.
Sure. So it still was about a year and a half before I actually left government. In the meantime, I continued to work with you. And that was really critical as far as establishing kind of that groundwork of what did I want this business to be? So who is my ideal client? At the time, it was young women who were just starting their careers. I also thought about things like limiting the number of sessions that I could have per week. And I say that because as much as I love coaching, I also find it to be very draining if I do too many sessions. So that might not be the case for everyone, but for me, that was the case. So for me to be fully present and to be of service and help to my clients, I need to be mindful of that. The other thing is, I remember telling you I'm a lousy salesperson. Like I really, that's not my comfort zone. And you said, Tracy, this is your ship. You steer it in any direction that you want to. And I was like, oh, it was like having permission to go, yeah, no, you don't have to be out there being the big salesperson. I wanted the business to be word of mouth, and that's really how it became, right? The other thing that I did was talk to other entrepreneurs and just, found out what their process was like, any kind of missteps they may have made, their learnings. And I think one of the most important things was to recognize what I wasn't good at and getting the help that I needed. So, for example, IT, forget it. Like, I didn't want to have to deal with IT. I got myself an accountant. And then probably the best money that I spent was working with a company called Black Coffee Studio, which is a branding agency out of Calgary. And they really helped to kind of refine that groundwork that you and I had done together, and really make the brand just very rich and very clear in my mind as far as, who I am and what kind of business I want to have. And there were 3 pillars that were identified in it, and it still defines who I am and what I do today. So it's, number 1, I'm a warrior. Number 2, I'm a catalyst for change. And number 3 is I'm authentic. So what you see is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been my experience too. So I love how you're living your brand, and the work that you did started to actually, cement that even further of how you could take that to another level. It's one thing to say, I stand for these three things, but it almost, the way you described it almost sounds like a mantra or something that you're consistently like telling yourself, reminding yourself, like, no, I'm doing the hard work because I'm a warrior, and because, and going through it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 I love that. I love that. Well, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges, and I want to read a quote from you that says this, which I love. This is more of your values coming through. There is an intensity to our approach that creates an environment where engagement is unavoidable. We challenge, we agitate, and tell the truth, breaking down toxic barriers, right? So as maybe in the early days, your niche, you had some other ideas for your niche, you really stepped into this bold leadership, I call it niche, or toxic leadership niche.
Right.
So what challenges, tell us about the challenges of trying to identify toxic leadership and, working with and partnering with clients in those areas.
So a part of the issue is that toxic people don't often recognize that they're toxic. So that can be difficult. However, we have had people reach out to us who recognize that there's toxicity on their team, and they say, I know it's bad. I know we can be better. We need help. So that's the kind of leader that we want to work with, as somebody who's willing to be vulnerable, who's willing to say, yeah, this isn't acceptable. It's not what we want our organization to be like, and we're willing to put the work in. And it's tough work. It's really challenging, not just for me and my business partner, but for the team itself, because you're asking them to get really uncomfortable. We've had people burst out crying, yell at each other, leave the space. And that just shows the extent of how toxic the team actually is, because they're not able to have those honest conversations with each other. It often just turns into conflict and personal attacks, and conflict, it is a good thing as long as it doesn't go into that personal attack mode, right? So that's one of the things that we work with them on, and help building their self-awareness and understanding that there's differences in each of us, and I might approach my work in a way that ticks somebody off, but I'm not doing that intentionally. It's just the way that I approach that. And so helping people understand that. The other thing that I wanted to say too about niches is there's another group that is very, very close to my heart, and that is Indigenous organizations. So that last position I had was with Indigenous Relations. I was the ADM for Indigenous Women's Initiatives. And I've worked off and on with Indigenous communities throughout my career. And I am not Indigenous myself, but I have developed some incredibly strong relationships, and I have so much respect for Indigenous worldview. And so a lot of that's in the not-for-profit area, but I will always do it because it's a group of people that I just love working with.
Right, right. No, I love that. I love that. And so when you think about your, the mindset that it takes to be successful in business, tell us about the money mindset that you've had to, especially with your perspective on sales.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think one of the things that I had to come to terms with really early on was about the ebbs and flow of business. So knowing that summertime, chances are I'm not going to be very busy. And that was very difficult for me for the first couple of years, because I just thought, oh my God, I'm not going to make any money. But then things would turn around and there would be more business in the fall. So just recognizing that. I do set annual targets for myself of what I want to earn. I try as much as possible to keep as much of those earnings in the business bank account as opposed to my personal bank account. I will, cover what I need, transfer out what I need to cover my, personal expenses. But by having that sort of cushion, it really helps when you are having a slow period. So I think that's important. The other thing is that I've never, to this day, have made as much money as I did while I was working in government. But I have never regretted that decision to leave, never, and to start this business. So you realize that, I didn't need all of that money. I'm doing quite fine. I'm comfortable with what I have. And yeah, obviously I want to grow it, but it takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just stepping back into your words that, when you described like working in that ugly environment. So now you're working on your own terms on things that you love and that you're passionate about, and you're creating the lifestyle that you need at this time in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just talking before we got on about, just some of the family stuff that we're dealing with right now. I have a husband who's in hospital, has had health issues for a number of years. I have, an aging parent. My mother passed away in 2017, but my father's had multiple sclerosis for over 50 years. He's 83 years old. We had to move him to long-term care facility, and all of those things. That's life, right? And having that business and having some flexibility to be able to deal with those things that are really so important is just great.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are really driven by creating a lifestyle business to do the
Yes.
things. That's a big driver of why we do this, in addition to our passions. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I want to ask a few more questions about growth and then talk about the future. So, can you think of, you mentioned a partner, maybe this is an example, but can you think of an example where you've had to make a tough business decision? And how did you do that?
Well, that's where that branding strategy and that groundwork that we did is really so helpful, because any decision that I make needs to align with those pillars, those brand pillars, as well as my values. And I have not worked with clients because that doesn't align with who I am and the kind of business that I want to have. And I think that, if you have those as sort of a guide or a filter, then it makes making tough business decisions a lot easier.
Beautifully said. I could not have said it better myself. And I'm sure some folks on the call are like nodding, like, oh, that sounds like Jessica. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Another aspect of, I think, business growth is, especially nowadays, is there's so much targeted at coaches right now. So are there some things out there or myths that new coaches kind of can fall prey to that really don't actually build the business? Are there common setbacks that you see coaches make over and over again?
I would think the most common myth is around advertising. I don't know that I know of any coach who got business from advertising. I tried it once and I didn't get one call. Fortunately, I didn't spend a lot of money on it, but I would think that would be, the main thing. And the reason why is because coaching is, as you know, Jessica, and everybody else here on the call knows, it's such an intimate relationship that you have with your client. And how can you show up like that on an ad? Like they need to know you to determine if you're fit for them, and you need to know them to determine like what their pain points are before you can sell them on whatever services you're offering. So to me, advertising is a complete waste of time.
Well said. Well said. And as I think about that too, you brought something up for me is that even the top coaches, the ones that are kind of, I would say, celebrity coaches, whether it's a Tony Robbins or a Jack Canfield or Jay Shetty, even they all have, they take it from an ad, but they bring it into a one-on-one conversation. So
Yes.
regardless, they're trying to, you must develop that relationship intimately, and it usually doesn't convert after, directly from an advertisement. Cool.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. One more here on in your growth is, what's a success habit that you practice that keeps you profitable and keeps filling your pipeline?
Okay. Well, this is where I have to give full credit to my business partner. Um, I mentioned about being an introvert. Networking is not kind of my thing. But one of the things that she has instilled in me is business development. So we have a weekly meeting where we talk about business trends. So, what are we seeing out there? Who are we talking to? Who should we be talking to? Where are the opportunities? And then after the call, she makes a list of all the things I say I committed to, and holds my feet to the fire and makes sure that I actually complete the things on the list. So she's quite extroverted, and she really knows how to mine her network. And she keeps saying to me, like, Tracy, you have a great network. It's better than mine. You need to go after it. And so she really pushes me, and I'm grateful for that. We were invited to, I was invited to an event a few weeks ago. It was with the Strathcona Horse Regiment here at CFB Edmonton, and I was like, oh, my worst nightmare. It's just going to be this networking event, but I copied her on it. And I said, I'm copying Ayako on this because I know she'll make me go. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So again,
Yeah.
recognizing the things that you're not good at and getting yourself the support you need to do those things.
Right, right. And she sounds like a great counterbalance to that on multiple levels for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, I'm conscious of the time and I want to leave time for questions. Anybody who needs to fall out at the end of the half an hour can do so, but we will run a little bit long today. So if you would like to stay and ask some questions, we'll do that. I have a couple more and then we'll go over to the group. So shifting gears into kind of future outlook, one of the big reasons why I invited you into this coach showcase is to share your perspective and your wisdom for the next generation of coaches, the ones who are coming out of this since a pandemic, since the last few years of just complete uncertainty. So, what words of wisdom would you have for them?
Well, what I just said, as far as recognizing where you need help and get it, don't feel that you can be all things to all people or that you can do everything. So be self-aware about that. The other thing that I would add is to be bold. So when I talk about bold leadership, I mean, like, do be bold. Take those chances. I was 50 years old when I left that government job. I was 5 years from collecting, a great pension. And a lot of people thought I was nuts. I know my mother was one of them who just couldn't believe that I would leave a government job in order to start a business and have no idea how it was going to go. But again, never been happier as a result of that decision. And then the last thing I would say is to be innovative, because our world is constantly changing and it's getting faster and faster, those changes. And I think that as a coach, as a business person, you need to be agile and responsive to those change.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much, Tracy, for just all of your insights and just sharing so much specifics about what you've learned. I mean, you've truly lived your brand, your bold leadership brand. You lived it before, you live it now, you live it in full color. Your hair reminds me of the color of your logo. I don't know if that's intentional, but it's like you're bold through and through. And I've so enjoyed this conversation with you. And I want to open it up to anyone else who has a question for you before we go for today, you can just chime in or raise your hand, whatever's easier for you, and ask your questions of Tracy and her broad experience in developing a bold leadership coaching practice. What questions does everyone have? Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
Hey. I really could relate to your comment on the impact that a lot of coaching in a day has on you.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about if you wouldn't mind sharing what you do for self-care and to kind of recharge your own batteries.
I have 2 large dogs that love to go to a dog park. So that honestly, that's my mental health break. I try to take them on a daily basis. The other part is, again, being an introvert, I do need just that time to be alone, to be just sort of reflecting and maybe doing some reading, just not interacting with others. And yeah, those are probably the biggest things that I do to recharge, because I do find, even when I'm doing workshops, like I'm exhausted by the end of the day. Yeah, it's very tiring.
Mm-hmm. And if a sort of a follow-up that's related is, do you have a more of a fluid structure to your work life, or is it like, for instance, you coach on certain days, or you do, you go on site for certain days of the week and then you're off a week or whatever? What is your structure?
So I have a coaching contract right now with the corporation in BC. So there's a number of coaches that are involved in this. And I have set specific times that I am available for coaching appointments with the individuals that chose me as their coach. As far as the rest of the week, I try to build more structure into my day. I know that I'm more effective in the mornings, for example. So I try to get, if there's something important that needs to get done, I try and hunker down and get that done in the morning. I'm not always successful. I have to admit, I'm a bit of a news hound. And sometimes I'll get into that news rabbit hole and it might be a few hours before I come out. And then, the other part is just, it depends on the client's needs as well, in terms of, when they want to do an offsite, what's convenient for them.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Thanks, Kristen. Arjuna, over to you.
Thank you, Tracy, for sharing with us today. Appreciate it. My thought was, I never considered having a partner in a coaching business. So I wouldn't mind hearing your pros and cons of having a partner in crime, and the pros and cons of it, and why you chose that versus going solo.
Okay, well, one thing is she's not a coach. So, that's a skill then that I'm bringing to the table that she doesn't have, that makes us more dynamic when we actually do facilitate sessions together. She is a part of Patrick Lencioni's table group of consultants. So she is very well versed on his different models for leadership, and she's very, very good at it. So we each kind of bring these different skills to the table, and like we said, that introversion, extroversion, like she's younger than I am, so she's very driven. I'm kind of like, nah, do I have to work that hard? But she really does push me, and I appreciate it. I really do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Oh, and the other thing, maybe just, and I don't know if you were worrying about like legal issues. So she's not actually like a business partner as part, in terms of a legal sense. So she has her own company, but we do like come together because we just decided, it's less complicated. We each want to still be independent, but come together when there's a reason for us to do so.
So almost more of a collaboration.
Yes.
Almost a full-time collaboration. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Tracy?
I
Hi.
thanks so much, Tracy, for coming and sharing with us. I was just noticing on your website, and you talked about it a bit, you've got a whole range of services from workshops to coaching. Was that intentional, or was that, just trying to fill up the days and get clients, or, what's the thinking, and what's sort of the ratio of coaching to workshops to leadership training that you are doing kind of at any time?
I would say most of it is workshops and training. I very small part of my business now is coaching. Having said that, I'm talking about coaching one-on-one. Having said that, my coaching skills are used anytime I do one of those workshops. As far as the kinds of questions that I can ask to, generate a more lively discussion or to challenge them, I do. I definitely can be quite, I guess, for lack of a better word, bold in those facilitation sessions, as far as, really challenging leaders and their teams as to why they're doing things a certain way, and what possibly could be an outcome if you do things differently. And I actually at one point, that's kind of irrelevant. I won't even tell that story. But so yes, it was intentional, partly because I couldn't make it just with coaching alone. So I needed to, incorporate some other activities, some other services that would kind of give our clients, more options, a more fulsome experience. So yes, it was intentional. Plus, I love doing the workshops.
So you can reach a broader group of people as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. And some of those people may come to me afterwards and say, hey, I'm interested in, having you coach me. And that has happened, right? After I've done one of those workshops, they say, hey, I want to go a little bit more in depth. Can you work with me?
Great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I remember, Tracy, too, when I first met you, those, or maybe mid of after we'd known each other a little bit, but those resiliency workshops and things like that. So you had a clear skill set that was a sweet spot for you, is just knowing how to navigate the bigger rooms and tackling organizational issues too. So it makes sense that your business kind of gravitated towards that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Can I ask a question as well?
Yes, Jules, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. So yeah, Tracy, this resonates with me quite a bit. I admire your courage to do what you do. So I used to be in government, and I've no longer with government. I'm 49, turning 50. So yeah. So this, like, your experience really resonates with me. So that's one. One of the questions I had was around, so it would have been around those, what was it? It was around those, I'll call it almost the side businesses that you have, or the complementary services that you have. How did you find the niche? How did you decide on the niche? Because there's so many things you can do out there, right? Just curious.
Sure. I guess part of it was just the skills that I'd acquired throughout my career. So, for example, getting certified in change management. So I have change management expertise, hence the development of the change resiliency workshop and using the transitions model to help people understand change management. I am the Myers-Briggs type indicator assessments, being able to do that with groups is a great team building activity. So and everything supports each other. Like when we put proposals together, it's really cool how we're like, hey, you know what? I think we should put conversational intelligence in here. Let's add that. And then, we'll offer some coaching, and then maybe we do the 6 types of working genius with them. And it's just, it comes together really nicely. So even though it seems like, oh, I've got, all these add-ons, they actually all work really well together.
Okay. Okay, and your initial workshops as you started, so that's one question that keeps popping in my mind. So I've seen stuff like coaching out of the box, and I'm not exactly sure what that is yet, but like to start putting those initial workshop presentations together and materials together. Yeah, just wondering how you went about that. Is it something out of the box that you picked out? Did you create stuff yourself? How because that would be quite time intensive, I'm thinking.
I actually did started a couple of workshops while I was still with the government, and I practiced on our department staff. So the first one was the MBTI one, but that one, as part of the certification, you have to follow a certain outline that they use. So that one wasn't that difficult for me to put together. But the change resiliency one was just, I was really fascinated with the neuroscience. I had taken a course on conversational intelligence with the now past Judith Klassner, and it just blew my mind as far as how our mind is impacted, or our brains rather, are impacted by change. So for example, when change is handled poorly, in the absence of information, what employees will do is they immediately go to their reptilian part of their brain. It's called like the amygdala hijack. And when they're in that state, they only care about their survival, right? They can't look forward. They start displaying all kinds of toxic behaviors like gossip, self-sabotage, developing workarounds. So the only way to get somebody out of that mode is establishing, a level of trust in which you want to move staff into an environment of being a co-creator. So you're like becoming, and that requires giving them the information that they need, caring enough to ask questions that you don't have answers to, because then you start to engage like the prefrontal cortex. I know this sounds really geeky, but I just love it. But it's the prefrontal cortex is where you actually have innovation, where there's trust, where you're actually able to plan ahead. It's a really beautiful space to be in with people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jules. Okay. Well, I have another question for Tracy, which is just like, what's next for you? So where do you take Brave Bird Studio from here?
Who knows? Could be anything. That's one thing. So there's 6 types of working genius that I talked about. So there's 6 types. There's wonder, so the people that have that big picture thinking, that look at possibilities, what can happen. Invention, they come up with solutions and create things. Discernment, which the people that say, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, should we be doing this? Then you have galvanizing. Those people are kind of the cheerleaders. They rally around a project and say, hey, let's get it done. Enablers that'll actually do the work, and then tenacity, which are the people that'll push it over the finish line. So my 2 geniuses are wonder and invention. So I love to create. So I get bored with the status quo. It probably explains, like after I took that test, or that assessment rather, it explains why I never stayed in a position for more than 5 years. And 5 years would have been too long. So if I could be brought in to create something, build something, and then once it was kind of in place, I'd get bored and needed to move on. So like I say, it could be anything, Jessica, I don't know. But one thing that we are pursuing is we've actually developed a bold leadership development program. So we have started to roll it out with some smaller municipalities, and it focuses on self-awareness about building, strong and cohesive teams, managing change, and then understanding what it means to be of service to others. So those are sort of the 4 components of the program. And so we're pushing that right now. And like I said, who knows what'll happen next?
Well, you're demonstrating you're open and flexible to whatever that is, whatever abundance awaits you. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and you have to adapt, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. So any other last questions for Tracy? Okay, I think this wraps our first coach showcase. So I just want to, Tracy, I'm such a fan of yours. I'm so just in admiration of what you can achieve, what you knew you could achieve, and what you still have yet to achieve. There's so much potential that I've always seen in you, and yet you keep moving forward. You keep having these chapters in your life, and each chapter is so rich and so bold and so you. And so I'm just a huge fan. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. I'm sure there's so many more lessons that we could learn. We could just take all day, but we'll let everybody go. And we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. And Jessica, thank you. It's Mutual Admiration Society here because, again, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that profound question.
Yes.
So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And you can find Tracy at Brave Bird Studio, or find her on LinkedIn, Tracy Balash, and connect with her. I'm sure she'd love that. Great.
Thank you. Great.
So much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great
day.
Take care. Bye.